You're listening to Texas Live with K5, your number one resource for all things outdoors in North Texas.
Welcome to Texas Live with K5, your North Texas outdoor podcast. Thanks for joining in. I want to introduce my guest here, Lynn Roller. How you doing, Lynn?
Good,
man. It's good to have you.
Well, I appreciate the invite.
Man, Lynn is, if I have any issues at all with electronics, Lynn's my very first phone call. He's a subject matter expert in electronics, but I don't want to tell his story, Lynn. What do you do, man?
Well, I retired several years ago from Lockheed Martin. I was a software/systems engineer out there for almost 30 years, and I retired and wanted to start a little gig to kind of make a little extra fishing money and try to help people. And so I started doing the marine electronics training, kind of cover a full gamut of things from teaching how to use your electronics to waypoint management to troubleshooting issues. I tried to expand and do a lot of other things that some of the other people who were doing marine electronics, they're more of a niche thing and looking at just teaching you what you're looking at. And I'm teaching more about how to set the unit up, what you're looking at, and not only just the graphs, but how to use all the electronics on your boat. You know, today we have Garmin trolling motors, we have Lowrance trolling motors, we have Minn Kota trolling motors, and all of those trolling motors now communicate with their own brand graphs. So, being able to utilize the graphs to control the trolling motors is a big benefit, and I teach mapping. And so those are the things that I kind of cover as a general rule. I have a lot of clients that call me. I was just out at Lake Fork a couple days ago where I had a gentleman who had a problem with his 360. And one other thing that kind of sets me apart is I carry extra cables and a battery. And so I was able to hook my battery up to his 360 to tell him that it wasn't his boat, it was his 360. And we called Humminbird, and I got the warranty exchange and everything worked out with him while he was on the phone. So that's another thing that I do. Started out in the first part of 2021, so I've been doing it a little over 4.5 years. Probably have I've been on probably close to 600 trips now over those 4.5 years.
Wow.
So been keeping me kind of busy for a retired guy. And some other things that I do that's a little different from some of the others is I'm also a dealer for Lance Vick Boat Lanes and Tom Main's Guide Lanes. So they provide the running trails for a lot of different lakes over the Metroplex in East Texas. So as a part of my gig while I'm in the boat, I don't really charge anything for installing them, and I just charge the prices that they have for their downloads. So I have all those on my laptop. So let's say if you want the Ray Roberts or you want Lake Fork put on your graph, I'll pull them off on a chip, pop them in the unit, load them up, and show you how to use them. That's all a part of my normal gig, my normal session, if you will. So the last thing that I'd like to touch on that I do is free consultation. So I have a lot of people that will see things on Facebook or most of my advertising has been through word of mouth. So I'll have somebody call me and say, look, I've got these old electronics I want to upgrade, or look, I'm buying a new boat. What do you recommend? And, my first question to them is, what kind of fishing are you doing? What kind of boat is it? Those type things. And then I basically share my experiences with them on what I've seen over this 4.5 years. Of course, I've been using electronics for 30 years, but been really, really involved for 4.5. So I kind of help them pick and choose what electronics goes on their boat.
Okay. So what are the differences? All the time, Jessica and I are always getting phone calls. I want to upgrade, especially a lot of these high school anglers that are joining the sport. Man, I need electronics. I see the forward-facing sonar. What do I need to go with? And what I tell them is, what are you comfortable using? Like, what's on your boat right now? Mm-hmm. Because if you're going through all the settings and stuff, if you know how to use the buttons and everything on your graph or know the displays on your unit, I feel like it's going to make it a lot easier, but you're the expert on that. So what's your opinion?
Yeah, that's really good advice. It kind of depends if you've got a clean slate or whether you're already working with equipment on your boat. I had a gentleman the other day, he called and asked me, he said, hey, I've got I've got the new Explorers on my boat, and I want to add forward facing sonar, and I keep reading about how Garmin is the best, but I've got Humminbird equipment. What's the Humminbird like? And I said, well, in my opinion, and I'm not sponsored by any of these companies, in my opinion, Garmin has the best forward facing sonar. But if it's a decision of cost, you may want to go with, in his case, he may want to go with the Humminbird forward facing sonar, the Mega Live 2, versus spending the extra. He was looking at a 12-inch graph, $2,000, $2,500 on that extra graph. And like you said, that is a definite thing to think about, is how comfortable you are with the user interface of that Explorer unit versus learning a whole new setup, right?
All right.
And it's been my experience. I have had forward facing sonar, a Garmin unit, since it came out. I kept that for a while. I'm a big Humminbird fan. I like the Humminbirds, especially their mapping. And as soon as Mega Live came out, I put Mega Live on my boat, and I was very disappointed. And I think a lot of Humminbird users were disappointed in the first generation of the Mega Live. But it's just like any other technology. That was 2019, 2020. I think it was 2019, late 2019 or 2020 when Mega Live 1 came out. And I ended up going back when the LVS 34 came out. I went back to the Garmin. And it's just like I said, any other technology, it just takes a little while for everybody to catch up. So now, you're seeing Humminbird catch up in the forward facing sonar game. They did a big revamp of their software when they came out with the new Explorer units. The Helix units have been discontinued. They're good units. The Gen 3s and Gen 4s were their best units. But now they've got the Explorers, which they turned it up a notch. And when they did that, before, the Helix and the Solix units were two different user interfaces, two different sets of software. Now what they did is they already had the Solix line and the Apex line. Now they have the Explorer line, and they, if you will, made everything common from a user interface perspective. So when they did that, their software updates are done much faster than they were before on the Solix units and even on the Explorers. So now, the Mega Live to me is getting to be a player. It's much more usable. But I still go back to the point of Garmin is the leader. They were the first to come out with it. Lowrance is second, in my opinion, and Mega Live is still third. Now, the gap has closed. If you'd asked me that in 2021, Garmin was way ahead of Lowrance. Now it's not so much. And the other thing that you need to think about is what kind of unit you have. If you have a Lowrance, do you want to go to a Garmin, or if you have a Humminbird, if you want to go to a Garmin, and also how comfortable you are with the user interface. That's another thing to think about. For example, Mega Live has a few settings for your forward-facing sonar. Lowrance has very few settings, and Garmin has the most settings. Well, if you've got more settings, you have the ability to tweak the picture a lot more and cover different situations. Lowrance, in my opinion, from what I see, everybody that is a Lowrance user, their biggest thing they like the most about the Lowrance units is the ease of use with the touchscreen and the user interface. I feel like, being in this business for almost 5 years, that Lowrance's tact when they market a product is, I want that unit to be usable and the best it can be right out of the box without having to tweak any settings. And in fact, when I get into a person's boat that has Lowrance electronics, there aren't a whole lot of tweaks I make. It's more about, what do the settings do? Why would you change them? How does the sonar work? And go from there. And that transfers directly over to the forward-facing sonar, the Active Target and the Active Target 2 for Lowrance. There's only really a couple of settings, 2 or 3 settings that you really have to worry about. And the main one is the contrast to get your picture better. And speaking of Active Target 2, while I'm on that topic, Lowrance just came out with a couple of updates over the past 3 months. Really, really, really big leap in making those units way more usable. They've come out with some new color palettes, and they've added some other settings that you can change. But those are not settings that I feel like you have to adjust all the time. It's like a set it, forget it type thing.
Awesome.
But in my opinion, it depends upon, once again, just summing it up, what products do you have on your boat? If you have a clean slate, what do you want to go with? And what kind of user interface do you want? Do you want to stick with?
Man, that's awesome. I appreciate that.
You bet.
Hey, y'all stay with us. This is the number one topic in fishing right now, electronics. And we've got the guru here. So y'all stick with us. We're going to take a little break and we'll be right back. This is brought to you by K5 Trolling Motors and Electronics out here in Weatherford, Texas. If you need any electronics installed, if you're looking to purchase any new electronics, if you want to add a awesome spot lock trolling motor, they sell them all. So give them a call and they'd love to help you. The number is 817-757-9915. They're open Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. Thanks. Welcome back to Texas Live with K5 here. I got Mr. Lynn Roller with us. We're talking electronics, and it's the number one topic in fishing right now. Everybody wants to know, what electronics should I get, to catch more fish? And I find it comical because you got some guys that they get these electronics and they spend all this money and they immediately think when they launch that boat on the water and they turn them on, they're going to catch fish. And I mean, you've got to have time on the water. It was said back at Honey Hole Outdoors, what was the number one thing that Wilcox said? There's no substitute for time on the water.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
I think it's the same thing with these electronics. It's not as easy as just launching the boat and going out there and wetting the line. I mean, do you have anything to say on that? I mean, I figure you probably see it a lot.
Yeah, I have a lot of clients that are very brand new to forward-facing sonar, and one of the things I tell them is, you need to spend time on the water, just like you said, and you're going to have a lot of questions, and don't expect to catch fish like you see the guys on the Bassmasters or MLF or any of those fishing shows that you watch, the tournaments. Because of the fact that they're editing a lot of some of that stuff is edited, right? And obviously the live is not, so you can see how long they go. But my first suggestion at the end of my session to people who are new, if they don't crappie fish, is to go crappie fishing, because, like you said, time on the water. I feel like if you're new to it and you just go out and start bass fishing, you're going to get discouraged. The crappie fishing, you may still get a little discouraged, but you'll at least be able to get bit more. I thought it was kind of odd. I watched a Bassmaster tournament, a recap. I guess it was last November, one of the late series of the Bassmasters when they were up north, right? And they were interviewing this gentleman, and I don't remember. I think he placed fourth or fifth, and they asked him, they said, well, the first day you didn't do so good, but the second day looks like you did pretty good. And he said, well, I don't know. It all depends upon how you define pretty good. And the broadcaster said, what do you mean? He goes, well, and I don't know if this guy just made these numbers up or if he really counted, but he said, I threw it 212 fish and I got 9 bites. So if you do the math, that's not a very big percentage of getting bites.
Right.
So you just have to be very careful with it and don't get too discouraged, because you're exactly right. There is no substitute for time on the water.
And it blows me away, all these years of fishing competitively, just fishing for fun. How many fish have we thrown beside that just looked at your bait, swam off? Exactly. It happens all the time, and it drives me bonkers. Sometimes I had just a little story. 2 years ago, there was a benefit tournament out at Possum Kingdom Lake, and me and my best friend fished it. We ended up weighing in the biggest bag of my life, 35, 12 or something like that. Well, that morning we were headed to the lake, and I told him, I said, man, I know they're going to be on this ledge. I don't even want to carry the live scope. I had active target at that time. I said, I don't even want to carry it. So I left it underneath the back seat, and it was insane. We pulled up there, 10-inch worm, threw it up there on the ledge. First bite, 8.5 pounder.
Oh my God.
And then we just sat there and whacked them. So sometimes I feel like for me, it's more of a distraction than it is a help. Mm-hmm. It's sometimes, I don't know. I mean, sometimes I feel like I can't catch them unless I have it. Dennis and I went out this past weekend, the guy that was on the first episode, and we thrashed the crappie. Now, I really don't think we would have caught them if we didn't have the live scope. So I don't know. It's kind of a weird balance there.
Yes. Yeah. Like you said, it is there are times when you can catch them without it. There are times when you need it. But what I try to tell people is, especially the new people that are amazed at the technology, right? Because it's really, really cool stuff.
It is.
Don't get too focused on it, because if you get focused on one fish and trying to catch one fish, I'm not talking about if you found a Big Bertha and you wanted to try to catch her, right? I'm talking about just out fishing a tournament or something and you get locked on one fish. You can spend way too much time if you're not careful, you know. And as you use it, you're going to get a feel when you throw a bait up to that fish, whether that fish is interested, semi-interested, or not interested at all, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of what I tell people is you're right. You don't have to have it. And I'll tell you a quick story I had with a client of mine out at Lake Athens last year. I had done a session with this older gentleman and his wife, and they called me back about 4 months later, and he said, "I want you to come out, and I want you to spend 3 to 4 hours, and I just want you to use live scope and show me how you catch them." So the first hour, I got up on the deck and I was trying to show him, you know, what we're looking for, and basically trying to find a few fish to pitch at to get their reactions. And we finally found some fish under a dock, and I caught the fish, one of the fish, and we saw the whole thing. He had the transducer on his trolling motor, and so I was like, okay, that's enough for me. Now you got to get up here and you got to use it, okay? And he had the remote around his neck, and he was in a bass cat, and you know how they have the trolling motor foot pedal way up to the front. And he said, "Lynn, I can't get up there." He said, "I'm afraid I'm going to fall in." So I run the trolling motor from my remote, and I'm like, well. So I didn't say anything at first. I let him use it for about 10 or 15 minutes, and he was having difficulty because he would turn the trolling motor and he'd see a fish. He'd get his hand off his remote, he'd get his rod, and he'd throw it. By that time, the boat had either moved or the fish had moved, right? So after about 15 minutes, I said, "Look, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but that's not going to work." And I explained to him that you got to have your foot on the trolling motor at all times. Either that or you got to have a separate pole.
Right.
And for him, the way he wanted to fish, he needed an electronic pole that he could control with his foot away from that other foot pedal, right?
Right.
So he was kind of getting discouraged. And the 2 or 3 areas that we had looked at first thing that morning, there weren't that many fish there. And his wife said, "Well, hey, let's go over to so and so cove. Let's go try that cove." So we crank her up and we go over there, and I drop the trolling motor, and sure enough, man, the fish were in there. It was like daylight dark. As soon as I dropped the trolling motor, I saw 4 fish. Pitched my bait out there, boom, caught one about 2 pounds. And so I let them fish for about an hour in there, and they caught 5 or 6 more fish in that one little area. And my comment to him after we left there was, okay, because he was kind of upset about having to spend another $1,000 on another pole, right? And I said, "Look, this is a tool. You can use that tool several different ways. One is what I was trying to teach you is how you find the fish, present to the fish, and catch the fish. The other way that you can use it is you saw the 2 or 3 areas we started with. We never saw hardly any fish on the screen, right? But when we went into the second area, we saw, or the fourth area, we saw a lot more fish, right? So you can use it in that way and not worry about actually following your bait and seeing the fish strike, right?
Right.
It can be used that way to basically enhance your time on the water or make you more efficient, right?
Right.
So
Absolutely.
if you go in an area and you shine it and there's nothing there, it's time to pack up and move on, right?
Right.
If you don't see any shad or any activity, pull the trolling motor up and go somewhere else. Right?
Yeah. And like on my boat, I've got the Mega 360 and I've got the Garmin the LVS 34 live scope. And it's really nice because I can cruise through there and I see a brush pile that's 30, 40 feet away. I'll cruise up there and on mine, you can sometimes tell if there's fish in it, but sometimes it's hard to tell.
Yes.
And I'll go up there and just kind of shine over with my live scope. If there's fish there, fish it. If there's not, keep moving on. It's nice if I see there's fish there and it's from here to the wall. I can spot lock right there and flip my jig out there. I'm a crappie fisherman. I mean, I eat up crappie fishing. I used to chase some green fish. Now I'm all crappie. I guess everybody says I'm too young to be a crappie fisherman, but I love it, man. I mean, but that's what I do. That's how I use my stuff. And
Well,
it seems to be efficient.
yeah, and when people ask me, if I have somebody call me and say, if money's not an issue, what would you put on a boat? The perfect setup, and that is the perfect setup in my mind. A Mega 360 with some sort of forward facing sonar. If you want the best, like I said earlier, I think it's the Garmin. But you may already have a Lowrance. To go back to that conversation we had, right? But the Mega 360, just you nailed it. The Mega 360 allows you to see things, what I call statically, right? That you may not see. And then if you find it, you can take your flashlight, your forward facing sonar, and shine it and see if there's fish in it. Because you're right. There are times when there's cover or structure that's hard to tell if there's a fish in it with your 360, not with the live scope, right?
Right.
You can go look at it and see.
Absolutely. Well, that kind of brings me into my next topic is rigging. I mean, I'm sure you go out. I mean, I'm sure you've had clients that you've gone out with that maybe might have been a little questionable. I mean, and it's no offense at all, but I feel like rigging is important. I mean, you want to make sure you got the correct voltage. You want to make sure you got the correct wire size. Of course, that's what we do in our business over here. But I just want to know your opinion. Like,
Okay.
you could probably see it when
Yes.
you're out there immediately, can't you?
Yeah, I got a couple of little stories I can tell you on that.
Okay. All right.
So, power harnesses came out, I don't know exactly when, but when I started seeing them was, I think, late 2020, early 2021. Okay. And me being the nerdy engineer that I am, as soon as I started reading about them, I wanted to get more information. So I'm just like anybody else. I'm looking at the internet, I'm looking at social media, and I was seeing a lot more negative posts about them. Snake oil, you don't need that, those type things, than I was positive posts. Well, I don't remember exactly when it was. It may have been late 2021, early 22, but it doesn't really matter. I had one of my clients. He upgraded. An older boat, and he bought a newer boat, not a new boat, but a newer to him boat. And he called me up and he said, "Hey, Lynn, I need you to come out and meet me. I moved all my graphs from the other boat to this boat, and I want you to update them, and I want you to just make sure everything's set up properly." So I jumped in his boat that afternoon, and his console graph was a Humminbird Helix. And if any of you have updated any Humminbirds, you know that when you do a software update, it completely sets the unit back to factory. Okay. When I say factory, I mean the settings, not your data. It doesn't lose your waypoints or anything. So I had pulled the boat off the trailer, and he was parking the truck. So the unit fired up, and I immediately went to the side imaging screen, and I noticed that screen was very bright, and it looked really good. And I hadn't even adjusted any settings. I actually went to the settings to make sure they were at the default settings, and they were. So I thought that was kind of odd. So I went up to the front, and he jumped in the boat. I picked him up, and he jumped in the boat, and I updated his Garmin. So as soon as his Garmin restarted, the live scope came up, and man, it was just crisp screen. Well, I updated his other Humminbird he had at the front where he has 360, and I said, "Hey, what's going on with these graphs?" He goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Man, these things look awesome." I said, "They're really popping." And he said, "Well, I had them put an extra cranking battery in, and I run it in parallel, so I would never run out of juice. And by the way, that was not lithiums. That was just AGMs." And he said, "Oh, by the way, I put a power harness." And I was like, "What? What? Tell me more." So he told me what brand power harness he put on. So that was a note to self. So I called the manufacturer of that power harness the next day. And the gentleman that answered happened to be the owner of the company. And I asked a whole lot of questions. And basically, after the conversation, I called up one of my riggers that I use, and I said, "Hey, I want one of these harnesses, and I want it tomorrow." He goes, "Oh, I got one in stock now." I said, "All right, I'm coming down tomorrow. I want you to put it on." So in my boat, I have a 2021 Phoenix 12-inch MSI G3N Helix at the console, Gen 312 MDI unit, down MG unit at the front, and a Garmin 12-inch 126 with an LVS 34 and the Mega 360. Before I put that power harness in, and I'm not knocking Phoenix, and I'm not trying, I don't want to knock any boat brands because they all do excellent work. But in this particular case, I had a 0.5 to 0.6 voltage drop from the console to the bow unit on my Humminbirds. I put that power harness in, or he put it in for me, and now I have a 0.1 voltage drop from the console to the bow.
Wow.
Okay. And so that all has to do with how many hops they make from the cranking battery or whatever battery you're using to that electronic, right? So they, boat manufacturers, they run wire from, different ones to different things, but some of them run wire from the cranking battery to the console to some fuse block, and that allows you to tie more in, and then they run another wire from there to the front to another fuse block, and then they run the wire. I'm not an electrical engineer. I just know about Ohm's law that says you're gonna, one thing, you're gonna lose voltage over length, right?
Right.
And I don't know what the law is, but that says you're gonna lose voltage when you cut a wire, but you do, right? When you splice them back together, you go through those junctions.
The weak point.
Exactly, it's a weak point. That's what these harnesses do. Okay. So fast forward about 5 or 6 months, and I got invited down to an event last year down at Lake Houston, Berkeley. I'm a pure fishing ambassador with Berkeley and Abu Garcia. I was invited down to bring my boat because they were flying 10 pros in. They're 10 pros, and they brought 40 or 45 media people in, and they were going to do a kind of a dog and pony show at NASA on day one, and on day two, the pros were going to get in the boat and with media people and show off these forward-facing sonar baits. So I got a call to see if I want to go, and I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I'm in. So we put our boats in that morning, and they bust the pros out and the media, and Justin Lucas got in my boat.
Wow.
And Justin runs a Phoenix.
Right.
So Justin got in the boat. I introduced myself, and I'm like, if you need, my boat's yours. Do what you need to do. If you have any questions, let me know. And he looked down. And he said, well, I'm gonna have some questions. He said, because I don't run Humminbirds or Garmin. I run Lowrance. And I was like, no problem. That's what I do is I teach electronics. And he said, well, you should be doing this. And I'm like, no. I'm going to sit back here and watch. So he went down the creek a little ways and backed the boat up against the bank, put my talons down, dropped the trolling motor, picked up some of the baits, and the media guys were up on the front. I'm sitting in the back, just watching. And here about 15 minutes, he turned around. He said, hey, Lynn, what kind of lithiums are you running? I said, I'm not running lithium. He said, really? I said, why do you ask? He said, this screen is unbelievably crisp and clear. I've never seen one this crisp. It's like, well, I'm not running lithium. He goes, what's your secret? I said, I'm running a power harness. When I said power harness, he did not know what that was.
Wow.
Here we have a touring pro that did not know what a power harness was. I almost fell out. I was like, wow. So I explained it to him, and he said, well, I'm running a Phoenix, and he had a newer Phoenix in mine, and they had an upgraded, I forgot what they call it, but they had an upgraded harness in there. And I said, well, I'm not knocking Phoenix's harness because I don't know how it's wired. I just know that this is a direct connect to the battery.
Right.
And so I found that pretty odd that he didn't know. Fast forward 3 more weeks, and I had a client of mine. He and I fished a tournament at Granbury together in my boat. He's got a Skeeter that he had just bought a Skeeter. He'd had it about 6 months. Same exact graph setup on his boat. Okay, 2 exact same units, same Garmins, same Mega 360, same LVS 34. So after about 20 minutes of fishing, he jumps up on the front. He looks down at my front graphs and he goes, "Man, you're holding out on me." I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Man, your graphs are much more crisper than mine." And I said, "Well, you don't have a power harness in yours." And he goes, "Well, why didn't you tell me about it?" I said, "Well, first thing is most people don't want to spend the money. It's $400 to $500 depending upon where. If you buy that one, I know that a lot of the shops are making their own, and I know those are a little less expensive. But by the time you buy it and you install it, you're looking anywhere probably from $400 to $700, right? To hook
Right.
it up. That's what I think the going rate is.
Yes,
right?
sir.
So, I said, most people don't want to spend that kind of money. And I could go on with several other of those type stories of people that have put the harness in and have been, really, really impressed with it. Another client that had a wiring harness, he had a question about a wiring harness. And the first thing he did when he called me is he said, hey, I had somebody tell me I don't really need it, and it's pretty pricey. And he said, I said, well, look, you just bought a brand new Skeeter. You probably give 80 or 85,000 for it. You got all these electronics. You fish a whole lot of, and he had just had a problem with this Mega 360 that I helped him troubleshoot, where we had to get Humminbird on the line, right? And so he saw how, I'm used to troubleshooting things a little bit differently than with Humminbird or any of these companies, because it's basically Swaptronics. There is no really fault troubleshooting. It's basically replace the part, right?
Right.
And so he got a good feel of that when we talked to Humminbird. So what I told him was, look, you fish tournaments a lot out at Fork. You win a lot of money. You got to figure out what a peace of mind is, right? Because you saw the first question that Humminbird asked him on his Mega 360 problem was, well, how is it wired? Where does that wire go, and how many hops does it have? They didn't ask him that. They want to know exactly how it was wired, pretty much. And so, I just basically said, look, if you put the harness in, it gives you a peace of mind. You know that it's either your battery or it's your graph, or in his particular case, your Mega 360. But if you just got a graph problem, it's either your battery or your graph. It makes it very simple. You don't have to worry about, well, did one of my connections come loose between the battery and the front of the boat, or the battery and the console? You know that wire is solid. That's what I tell people. It makes the screens much crisper. And the reason, especially if you have an older boat. So anybody, when I say an older boat, I'm going to say anything made before 2019. 2019, 2020 kind of is on the edge. Boat manufacturers, I think, and I don't know exactly, but I'm going to say somewhere around 2020, 2021 is when they started upgrading the wiring. But if you go back and you look at an older boat, you may not see 8 gauge or 10 gauge wire going to your electronics.
Right.
I mean, you do this all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's the deal. And a lot of my clients don't, of course, they're not electrical engineers or, National Marine Electronics certified or anything like that. When they come in, they can't understand, man, my graph's blinking, acting crazy. Well, it's amazing what we see when they come in with an older boat and these units are just wired into the factory harness. The voltage difference between the console and the front, it's amazing sometimes. Yes. And like you said, I think it's because right around that 2019 markers, right when Panoptics and all these things started coming out. And then, as it goes on up until now, you're starting to figure out the different functionalities, and man, I need more screen and I need this and that. And that takes power, man. And you're losing juice, from the battery to the front, you're losing juice if you don't have a dedicated harness for those electronics.
Yes.
It makes a huge difference.
And what I tell people is, it's not just the power, it's clean power. I'm glad you brought up the voltage thing. I have a lot of clients that have, they'll have intermittent issues with their graphs. That is a telltale sign of a voltage issue.
Okay.
And that's another thing, that if you hire somebody else to do your marine electronics training, question to ask them is, well, do you have equipment in your vehicle to check my battery? Because I have a battery tester in my bag. I have voltmeters. I have multimeters to check the multimeters or whatever you call them to check the voltage, right?
Right.
And that helps me troubleshoot things. I actually, like Saturday when I was out troubleshooting a Mega 360 problem, I have an extra Mega 360 and an extra 12-volt battery. So, this gentleman had just paid someone to go put all this equipment in his 2008 Ranger, and it worked for a couple of months and that quit. So now he's doubting this gentleman his work, right?
Right.
And so I was like, nope, it's okay. Let's look at it. So we unplugged his power cord going to his 360, plugged my power cord in, and then into my 12-volt battery, which I knew was good. Nothing. And that made it so much easier when I even brought he was using a Helix 15. I brought my own personal Helix 12. We did the Swaptronics on the bath, hooked up to Mega 360 with my power to his 360. Still couldn't get it to connect. So when I called Humminbird, there was no telling them telling me what I needed to do. I told them what I had already done, and the lady said, "Well, you've done it all.
Right.
I'm gonna need to talk to the client and let's get a warranty."
Process of elimination.
Yeah.
I mean, it's troubleshooting.
Yeah. And we got off the call. He's like, "I think you might have done this once or twice." And I said, "Yeah, I've been on a few calls with Humminbird." And, that goes back to my background. That's what I did a lot, was troubleshooting issues. So that's kind of my forte, is troubleshooting those kind of problems.
Right. Well, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I love it because I get a lot of the same phone calls. And I'm going to tell y'all, probably 95% of the time I give them Lynn's number. By the way, we need to talk about that. We haven't mentioned the name of your company, not one time. We just mentioned your name. So you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. The name of the company is Fish Tech LLC. My phone number is 817-312-4293. And I do have a Facebook page, a business page, Fish Tech LLC. I try to post a lot of pictures of some interesting things I find when I'm out doing graphing and doing the sessions. You're welcome to message me through Messenger. You're welcome to text me or call me through my cell. And I also have an email address. It's Lynn, LYNN .roller, ROLLER @att.net.
And I mean, I'm just going to brag a little bit, just like myself. I love competitive fishing all in, everything about fishing. And there's a lot of times when I'm fishing working man tournaments, or I'm fishing some of these club tournaments, and guess who's standing there in the weigh-in line with me? This man right here. So if you want somebody that is out there actively using the electronics and knows what's going on, this is the guy to call. I mean, he's a really, really good guy, and he's helped us out a lot with, K5 trolling motors since we've got going. He just showed up here at the shop one day, and it's kind of funny. I said, man, I wonder what this old cowboy's doing walking up here. And then it was Lynn, and I mean, we've got a really good relationship. And like I said, he's more than happy to help, and just a super nice guy. So, but anyway, we're going to take a break real quick. And when we come back, we're going to talk about trolling motors. So y'all stay tuned. This is brought to you by K5 Trolling Motors and Electronics, your trolling motor and electronics shop out here in the Westoplex. If you need a trolling motor worked on, if you need to purchase a new trolling motor, if you need to purchase some electronics, give them a call. They're open Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. Their phone number is 817-757-9915. Welcome back to Texas Live with K5. We're talking with Mr. Lynn Roller. He's our subject matter expert on all marine electronics. And we're going to talk about trolling motors, Lynn.
Yeah.
Man, the three main ones that come to mind, the Garmin Force, which also they have their Kraken. You've got your Lowrance Ghost. They've got the new Ghost. Is it X?
Ghost X.
And then they've got their Recon line. And then you've got your Ultrex Minn Kota. And then their whole line. And I don't know, man. What do you know about them? You want to talk about them?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. So, from a spot lock perspective, Ultrex was, I guess Motor Guide had the first spot lock trolling motor. But in my opinion, Minn Kota really knocked it out of the park with the Ultrex. It's been a staple. That's what I see on most boats is Ultrex trolling motors. The newest Ultrex is the Quest. It's a beast. Very nice trolling motor. A little bit heavy. I haven't seen any specs on whether it's heavier than the Ultrex. You might know, but it feels like it's a little beefier.
It is beefier. I mean, it's kind of funny because when we have people that want to get their trolling motor worked on, they call me and they want to bring their whole entire boat in. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. We just got 2 bays in our shop. I don't mind if they bring their whole boat, but they're going to have to put their tarp on or bring their tarp because I don't have another place to put it.
Right.
And really one of the big distinct differences is they basically on the mount on the Quest, you have 2 bolts, 2 pinhead bolts that hold the motor on rather than 1 on the old Ultrex. And then secondly, it's unbelievable. I mean, the difference between the Quest and the older Ultrex as far as the new GPS and how the brushless motor compared to a brush motor, the quietness of it. Have you noticed some of that when you're out there?
Absolutely.
And the pristine, I don't know. I have one on my boat and I just absolutely love it. But like you said, the older Ultrexes, I mean, they're awesome motors.
Yeah, they're just the old Ultrexes to me are just workhorses.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's early in the Quest life cycle. I'm sure we'll probably wind up saying the same thing about it. And, but it's very very good trolling motor. Just a couple of things I want to say before I go to the next trolling motor is all of these trolling motors that you mentioned. Now I haven't had any experience with the Ghost X or the Recon, and I have had. You didn't mention Power Pole, but Power Pole has a trolling motor.
The Move.
Yeah, the Move. I've only had a couple of clients with the Power Pole Move, and those clients actually knew how to do the software update on them themselves, so I didn't have to go worry about figuring out how to do that. But that's part of my sessions, by the way, is when I get in your boat, I don't just do the training. Before we get started, all of your graphs, your trolling motor, your black boxes, if you have them for your live scope or forward-facing sonar, everything is brought up to the latest and greatest software. And I don't just do that in a vacuum. I'm showing you what I'm doing. Most of my clients, they don't want to know. They don't want to deal with it. But there are some that want to know how to do it themselves. And, for Garmin, there's an app that allows you to do that. For Lowrance, there's an app that allows you to do that. I don't, and now Humminbird has their own app, One Boat Network. So I'd just like to say something about that. I'm old school. I don't do the updates using the apps. I just don't trust it. There were I'm not going to say the manufacturer, but there was a manufacturer earlier on that did have some issues with that. It seems that all the bugs are worked out, but it's really simple to go out online for your Garmins, your Lowrances, your Humminbirds. If anybody has any questions, they can call me. I can walk you through it. But to get the software and put it on an SD card and put it in the unit. Now, for your Quest and Ultrex trolling motors, you can't update from the head units. You have to update through an app on your phone. And in my opinion, I don't think I've ever had an issue with the Minn Kota app being able to update a trolling motor. Lowrance is a little different. Lowrance, you can actually get the software, put it on an SD card, put the SD card in the graph, and you can update the Lowrance either from directly from the app or from the SD card on the graph and initiate the update from the graph. If you go over to Garmin, they've got an app called Active Captain. I just set up a boat this morning down at Lake Whitney, a big tidewater with all Garmin and a Garmin Kraken. We put all of you can register all your products on your Active Captain app. And once you get that Active Captain set up and all of your products are registered, it will tell you when the software needs to be updated.
Okay.
And so you can actually update the units and the trolling motor and your forward-facing sonar black box from the app. Not only that, it will allow you to update your charts. So I kind of went off on a little tangent there. So now I'm going to come back in and go to the Garmin trolling motor. So Garmin has the Force and the Kraken. The Kraken is more like a Tarova in the Minn Kota line. That trolling motor, basically, in my opinion, is a Force with a different mount, if you will. I mean, the way it works, the remote, the foot pedal, they all look the same, which is a good thing, right? So if you go from one boat that has a Garmin to another, I don't believe that the Kraken, the few boats that I've been in with Krakens, they don't come with a foot pedal. It is an option that you can buy. So I highly recommend that you buy it. It's a wireless foot pedal, and it runs on 2 AA batteries. Okay, and just FYI, I have a little bit of experience with the Garmin Force trolling motor. I sold my Ultrex late last year, and I put a Garmin Force on my boat because I was having more and more clients that had a Force, and in my teaching, I felt like I could get by teaching enough to use the trolling motor, but I wanted to get up one for me to use it myself and to learn some of the more advanced features. And so I've had it now for probably 10 months, 11 months. And so now I know how to interface it with the Garmin Graph. It's really cool, the interface that they have. Anything that you can do on the remote, you can do through the screen when you put the trolling motor bar on the screen. Very, very handy.
Wow.
And the Lowrance Ghost, one of my fishing partners has a Lowrance Ghost. They're a great trolling motor. A little noisier to me when you're turning the trolling motor than some of the others. I don't know if it's just that particular one, but it's a very powerful trolling motor, and you can connect it to the Lowrance graphs as well, and you can utilize the graph to control some of the functions of the trolling motor. Not near as many as you can with, in my opinion, as you can with the Garmin.
Right. Okay.
And speaking of trolling motors, one thing that I think a lot of clients miss, or they don't know it's there, is the jog feature. You know, the Ultrexes, you got a white puck in your boat that says Minn Kota.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. That's right. Sometimes boat haulers decide that the customer doesn't need that. So that is called a heading sensor. A lot of people mistake it for another GPS puck. It's not. The GPS on an Ultrex is completely built into the head. The only thing that Dakota heading sensor is used for is a feature called jog, and you have to calibrate it. You have to calibrate that heading sensor through your remote. But once that heading sensor is calibrated, it allows you to, once you have it calibrated and you're in spot lock mode, you are able to move the trolling motor with the remote, or if it's an iPilot Link trolling motor connected to your graph, you can move the trolling motor in 5-foot increments, right, left, forward, or backward. And there's a tremendous amount of my clients, when I tell them that, they say, I never use that. And it's funny, I had a gentleman earlier this year, it was out at Eagle Mountain, and I said, where's your remote? And he immediately knew where his remote was, right? He pulled it out, and he's like, are you setting up the jog? And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh, man, this guy knows. And then I go, you used it before? And he goes, oh, man, I had a Old Town kayak with a Minn Kota trolling motor. He goes, that's how I use that all the time. So, and it was funny, the install that was done on that, the gentleman didn't put the heading sensor in his boat, so I couldn't set it up.
Oh, man.
So he had to go back and get a heading sensor, from the vendor. But all the trolling motors do that. I just use the Ultrex. The Quest, by the way, does not have the heading sensor. The heading sensor is built into the trolling motor. But I believe that Garmin doesn't have a heading sensor, and I'm not sure about the Ghost. I don't think it does either. But they all have to be calibrated to be able to use that functionality. I can't remember on the Rance. The Rance is probably the least amount of trolling motors that I've done over the years. Obviously, Minn Kota is way, way above everybody else, and Garmin somewhere in the middle.
Right. So do you get a lot of people that get a trolling motor installed, don't have any idea how to use it, and you turn the power on and show them all the functionality of it?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Like the gentleman this morning, he had a 23-foot long Tidewater, had not even paired the remote to the trolling motor. So, wow. I mean, he actually took the boat out Sunday and ran it, but he never dropped the trolling motor. So, this session went from ground zero. Here's how you use the remote. Here's how you turn the prop on and off. Here's how you turn the head. And, oh, by the way, here's this jog function. And the biggest thing I like about the jog function is if you have your 4-faces sonar on a separate pole, it really, really allows you to line up on your target without spooking the fish, if you know what I mean. And the reason I say that is when I set up on a crappie brush pile, I want to be somewhere around 10 to 12 feet away from it, right? Sometimes even maybe a little closer because I want to drop on them or I want to pitch my bait and let it pendulum, right? Well, if I stop at 18 feet, I'm going and I hit my spot lock. You know how when you're moving, if you hit the spot lock and you don't slow down, what's the first thing that trolling motor is going to do? It's going to spin around and it's going to shoot power to it to make it stop. Well, if you get too close, obviously that prop wash is going to scare the fish, especially the shallower the water you're in, right? Well, the thing about jog is if I'm 18 feet away and I want to get 10 feet closer, if I tell it to go 10 feet, the trolling motor knows where it is and it also knows where it's going. So you're on jog, you hit the up arrow twice and it's going to go 10 feet. And as it's getting to that 10 feet, it's going to slow down. Now it's still with a Garmin. I noticed my Garmin Force really, really does that head spin around and prop wash kind of thing. It doesn't do it, really bad, but it's always still going to turn, but it's going to be really much, much slower. You're not going to get as violent of a prop wash situation, if you will.
Okay.
Now, I understand that the new Garmin Force Pro, it has a backwards. It doesn't. The head doesn't spin, which I think is awesome.
It's really cool.
That's innovative, in my opinion.
It's really neat because they're basically, but if it's got to be something where it's reversing the polarity.
That's exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
That's exactly what.
And so I mean, because if we've 3 years of working on trolling motors, I can't say that I haven't reversed polarity on one or two. You know what I'm saying? I got one of my customers out there that probably listened. And it was funny. It's the very first trolling motor I ever worked on. He called me and he said, "Hey, I got an issue." And he's going to know who he is listening to this. It's funny. But he goes, "Man, every time I go right, it goes left. And every time I go left, it goes right. And it's blowing out and doing all kinds of weird stuff." I said, "Man, I honestly don't know, but bring it to me." And I told him when he came back and got it, I said, "Man, that was a rookie error, and I'm sorry." And he was very understanding. But at that time, I mean, it's just DC voltage, so it was really cool to, I mean, I'm glad it happened and it was a positive thing, but I'll never forget it. And it just makes me think that may be what kind of the same process they're using.
I think that
so
it has
somehow
to be something like that. Yes.
So
yes.
That's cool.
I don't know how they do it, but it looks pretty cool.
It's almost like a forward and reverse on old hand control.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Same thing. Reverses the prop.
And I also heard that the new Force Pro has better GPS, tighter spot lock, but I don't really have the Garmin trolling motor. If I wanted to put another trolling motor on a new boat, I don't know that I would go with the Force. I might go with the Force Pro. The spot lock works pretty good, but it seems like every time, and I read this a lot online, you hit the spot lock, no matter how slow you're going, it's still going to turn the prop and kind of do a little prop washing.
Okay.
So I don't understand that, but it's obviously just a software thing. But a lot of people run into that problem.
Man, y'all, this is what it's so awesome to have a really good relationship with the electronics guy. Because I'm telling you, if I have customers that are calling me and asking me questions like this, I either refer them to Lynn or I call him and talk to him. And I mean, every now and then he might call and ask me a question, but it's just awesome, man. I really appreciate you talking about this with us. We're going to take our final break and we'll be back here in just a second. Welcome back to Texas Live with K5. I got Fish Tech LLC Lynn Roller here with us this afternoon. Lynn, I just want to ask you one question. This is going to be a tough one. Because, I mean, anytime that anybody asks me a question like this, I kind of freeze. But, man, there's so many people out there in, like, teaching electronics that, you see it all over Facebook. What sets you apart from the rest of those guys? And gals. Yeah. I see some women out there doing it too. Absolutely. I think it's really cool, but man, I just want to give you a chance to talk about what sets you apart from the rest of them.
Sure. So a lot of the people I see doing it are guides, and I think that's great. They're taking it more of on the fishing side of it. I'm taking it more from on the technical side of it. I do a lot of what I call image interpretation once I set the screens up to show you what you're looking at. But your guides are going to have the seasonal patterns and that type thing. And I have people call me all the time. Like, well, do you guide? No, I don't guide. I want to make sure it's not a guide trip. I bring a couple of rods with me if you have forward-facing sonar, or even if you don't. If you just have 2D up at the front, I show you how we used to vertical fish and watch your bait. But I do bring a couple of rods with some small baits on them, just so that you can see the baits and see how small the baits are and teach you how to track your baits. Now, if I see a fish, I may throw to it just to see if I can get a reaction. But very little of that time is me fishing, if any, okay? Another thing that sets me apart is my background. Almost 35 years in the IT world. I focus on making sure that the systems are up to date. Like I mentioned earlier, your graphs and your trolling motor. And the reason for that is if you buy a brand new boat, and I think you probably see this all the time, somebody buys a new boat, the graphs have been sitting on the shelf for 3 or 4 months, right? So these, especially Garmin, they're on like a 3-month cycle of software updates. And I think Humminbird has been longer than that, but I think they're moving toward that cycle even quicker than that. But here's the deal. People, I'm getting the boat with them and I say, I'm going to update your unit. He goes, well, I just bought it. Well, sorry, it's been sitting on the shelf. There's been updates. We want to get it updated. And here's the reason why. If you have an issue with that graph and you call support, one of the first things they're going to do is ask you what version of software. Some of the vendors, I won't mention names, but some of the vendors will say, well, we can't troubleshoot that problem until you update the software. Or they'll say, oh, that problem's fixed, whether it is or not, in the next version of software. So I at least get you to that point in time where you're up to date, right? The other thing that sets me apart is I travel to you, okay? So for my normal fee, I kind of stay Fort Worth based, and I have a place out at Fork that I go to a couple times a month. And for going to Fork or Benbrook, Arlington, Grapevine, Eagle Mountain, those 4 lakes, there's no extra charge. But I mean, I've had people like today. I had a client at Lake Whitney, okay, and I said, hey, if you come up here, you're going to save money. If I go to Whitney, it's going to cost you a trip fee. I mean, it just covers my time and gas.
Absolutely.
It's not like an exorbitant amount of money, right? And so depending upon how far it is from wherever I'm at, like I've based a lot of my training out in East Texas. I've been to Bob Sandlin, Cypress Springs, Athens, Sam Rayburn, all of those, it's just based on where I'm at and how far I have to travel. So that's another thing I think that sets me apart, because a lot of the guides, they're focused on one lake. That's where they guide. That's where they do it. I think one of the biggest things that sets me apart is, you have a hotline to me, just like any client that I have. When you hire me and we're done with the session, you're my client, and you're my client until I determine that I'm not doing this anymore, right? You have 24/7 access to me. Now, does that mean you can call me at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night and me pick up the phone? Probably not. It'll probably be Sunday morning. But if you text me or you call me, I'm going to return that in a timely fashion. I mean, I've had guys fishing tournaments call me on a Saturday morning at 9:30. Oh my God, this is doing this, and I'm in this tournament, and I actually do troubleshooting over the phone. And the reason I do that is because of my expertise from that 35 years of IT. That's one of the things that I used to do was I manned the phone lines to troubleshoot problems, and those 3 things I think are the main things that kind of set me apart from others, and I believe that I go into a lot more depth on how the sonars work, actually explaining to you how it works. And I think if you have a better understanding of how the sonar works, you're going to understand what you're looking at way, way better.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. But
And one last thing I forgot to mention, I think I mentioned it earlier, is free consultation. Even if you're not a client of mine, if you have a question about upgrading your electronics or putting new electronics, or if you have a question about a particular unit or what my thoughts are, welcome to call. And this does not only just include bass boats. I've done kayaks. It's a little bit different with a kayak, right? So I have to meet somebody where I can sit on the dock and and teach them and set things up. But I've done kayaks, and I've had clients from New Mexico. I've had clients from Louisiana. I've had clients from Oklahoma. I've been all over. I've been west as far as PK. I've been east as far as Sam Rayburn. So big, different client base. So those are the main things I feel that set me apart.
That's awesome, man. Well, man, I can't thank you enough for coming out here and talking with us.
Yeah.
For a long time there, I kept thinking, man, we just don't have any kind of a, talk show for, North Texas, fishing outdoor. I mean, this has been all about fishing. I mean, we talk about hunting too, and it's just really cool. And we'll have you on again. And guys, it's Fish Tech LLC. And Lynn, you want to give them your phone number?
Sure. It's 817-312-4293. And Tim, I can't thank you enough for having this opportunity to come out and speak. I've been to some bass clubs and speak. So if any of you guys have a bass club, want me to come speak or talk about a specific topic, I'm more than happy to come to your bass club meetings and talk as well. So,
man, that's awesome. Well, that's going to conclude our second episode of Texas Live with K5. Thank y'all for joining in with us. And until next time, we'll see y'all on the water.
Thank you for tuning in to Texas Live with K5, your number one source for all things outdoors in North Texas. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcast, or Spotify to support us and enjoy more North Texas outdoor content. Like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. If you're interested in joining the show or us mentioning your business throughout the show, contact us at k5trollingmotors@gmail.com.